Subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon, to never miss a video from us.
Hello and welcome to the Expert Interview Series, and today we have the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Bipin Nair, a seasoned financial crime compliance professional and social media ambassador at Accenture. With more than a decade of experience in the industry, Bipin has made significant strides in the field of risk and compliance. Currently serving as Business Advisory Manager at Accenture, Bipin has been pivotal in creating end-to-end training delivery strategies for staff, providing KYC and transaction monitoring support to global commercial and investment banking clients. He leads a team of qualified trainers, ensuring zero escalation and maintaining impeccable quality oversight. His expertise spans developing bespoke financial crime compliance, academy bootcamp curriculums, consulting on AML programs, and coordinating effectively with multiple stakeholders. We welcome you to the Expert Interview Series, sir, and hope our viewers get to learn from your experiences.
Thank you, Pooja. The pleasure is entirely mine.
Right. So before we begin, the first and the foremost question that comes to everyone's mind, if you can tell us more about your journey into financial crime compliance and what sparked your interest in the field.
Sure. So probably I'll just have to take you back in time for that. So when I started my career, I was working with leading global bank, HSBC. Okay. And when I was working there, I worked across multiple functions. And then eventually I got a chance to work as part of their financial crime compliance team. So that is when I kind of started knowing more about the domain, the subject, and also the entire story of why banks and financial institutions pay so much attention to this financial crime compliance aspect. So that is where the journey actually started. And I could immediately sense, because there are certain phases in your career where you get that feeling, right? That this is the role that was waiting for you, right? And that's probably what I also felt when I kind of got into the financial crime compliance team, worked across multiple functions there, and then I started leading the training delivery for one of the locations. And that's how it kind of started. And I think that was also a very critical phase for the bank as well, because unfortunately the bank had a huge regulatory impact and a fine, and we were kind of developing the entire training program from scratch. A lot of changes were happening with the systems as well. So a lot of these things kind of coincided at the same time. So I would probably say that it was probably meant to be that way, that when I kind of started or when I moved into the compliance team, that was pretty much the time when the action was really heating up as well. And I got to learn a lot as part of that role. And then I think the journey kind of progressed from there.
Right. So I think that you've seen, compliance, implementation and regulatory framework from the beginning. So what kind of changes have you seen from the beginning till date? I mean, what kind of escalations or what kind of issues have you seen, and how do you handle it?
If you look at it, the landscape has changed a lot. Okay, so probably if I were to take you back again in time to probably when the 9/11 attack happened in the US, I think we can probably, if you look at it from an anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing point of view, that was probably the tipping point, because when that tragedy happened, the world suddenly realized that while there were actual terrorists on those planes who kind of ran those planes into the buildings, but then at the same time, what the world also realized is that they were there in the United States for a long time, and they were actually getting funding through banks. Okay, so they were pretty much living a lifestyle like us. They used to go for movies, they used to buy groceries, and everything used to kind of be done through the proper banking channel. And that is when initially, because this event happened in the US, so the US regulators kind of became very serious about it. There was an act that was passed in the US Parliament called the Patriot Act. And that act kind of made it mandatory for a lot of financial, in fact, all financial institutions operating in the US to follow certain anti money laundering and counter terrorist financing guideline. And because most of these things, while they start off in the US, it kind of has a ripple effect across the globe. Soon, this kind of started spreading. So, if you ask me, there were controls in place earlier as well, but then after this 9/11 attack happened, it accelerated the process. And then what happened is that everyone realized that, okay, if this could happen in the United States, which is supposed to be the most powerful country in the world, this could happen anywhere, right? And when you look at the financial system being a key enabler for these terrorist financiers, it kind of made it even more serious. A lot of acts got passed across different geographies, even in India as well. We have a prevention of money laundering act. So the journey has kind of evolved over a period of time. At this point of time, I think what has happened is that while initially it was where a still situation where probably financial institutions used to focus on anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing as a tick box activity. Now, what has happened is that it has become a part of the DNA of the financial institutions, right? There is definitely a lot of interest in this particular activity and the serious repercussions. So it's not only a regulatory fine, but it's also a bigger impact, which could be economical, which could be political, which could lead to a lot of loss of lives as well, right? So it's never good. Money laundering is not good. Terrorist financing is not good, and all the other crimes, which we normally call it as predicate crimes, revolving around it is also not good. So what we have seen is that this landscape has been changing over a period of time. While in the initial days, if I were to just give you an example, most of the banks, they did not have a proper transaction monitoring system. So they used to kind of generate the data of their customers on an Excel file, and then they used to send it to a team of one or two individuals who used to manually review all the details and do a monitoring. But now, as things have evolved, we have transaction monitoring systems. A lot of big companies like Oracle are involved in creating really robust transaction monitoring systems. A lot of financial organizations have developed their own transaction monitoring systems. A lot of training has happened. People are more aware within the organization about the risk. So the entire landscape has changed, and I'm sure that maybe if you're discussing about this around 5 to 10 years down the line, a lot of things would have changed then also, right? Because it's going to evolve. Because one thing that I remember when I was getting trained, I was told was that if the financial institutions are smart, the money launderers are even more smarter. So when a new law is created, people come up with multiple ways to circumvent that law.
So I think the given light on the evolution, because I was not aware about that money laundering actually came from the 9/11 attack, and it became pretty serious after that. Of course, being a certification brand, we are seeing a lot of people enrolling for AML. The more focus is there, more jobs are there, more opportunities are there, and we see the landscape as well as evolving for compliance. A small question to add on, as you said that of course the landscape has evolved. How has AI impacted the work?
Just going back to something you mentioned, Pooja, just a small clarification there, that while 9/11 was the event that kind of triggered a lot of regulatory implementations, but money laundering existed even before that. In fact, in the early 1900s as well, money laundering was something that was happening. But then, of course, the controls were quite basic at that point of time.
They were lenient, more lenient.
Very lenient, and I think most of the banks did not even focus on that at that point of time, right? But now things have changed, and since you asked about the impact of AI in this particular field, there is a lot of involvement of AI that we are seeing. A lot of organizations are investing money into making sure that their systems, whether that's their screening systems, for screening sanctions related cases, or whether it is transaction monitoring, or whether it's customer screening. A lot of things are right now also kind of driven by AI in the background. So we hear about terms like machine learning and data science and all those stuff, right? But then this is something that is right now happening as well. So one of the things that I can probably quote as an example here is that when we look at let's say transaction monitoring, right? So normally the reality as of now is that if you have 10 cases that a transaction monitoring system generates,
Mm-hmm.
8 of those cases will be closed as false positive, which means that it's like a false alarm. So there were some transactions that got the system to trigger an alert, but then it might not be a case of money laundering. So you can imagine that if a person is working on 10 cases, and out of those 10 cases, 8 of them are false positives, that person is still putting in that effort. And this is where things like AI are kind of making the systems better, where they are eliminating this false positive, which means that now instead of you having to work on all those 10 cases, you will
To
be
just
probably focusing on those two cases,
two cases
because those are the actual ones which probably need
attention.
more focus, right? So that is something that we are seeing definitely, not only with the quality of the alerts and the cases being generated, but even in terms of the overall approach to learning as well. We can see a little bit of artificial intelligence coming into the picture. So it is obviously in a very basic stage, as I think all of us will acknowledge that we keep hearing the term a lot, but then we have not practiced it that much, right? So again, the financial institutions are also going through that phase where AI is somehow being integrated. It is trying to make life easy for the investigators, but then there's a lot that has to happen. Right now we are in a very nascent stage when it comes to integrating AI, but of course it does not mean that it has not started. Different organizations are at different phases of integrating AI into their entire process, but then it is just a start of the road right now. I can say it will still need a lot of more progress to happen.
Thank you so much for the information. I think that makes sense. And we, of course, we are continuing the interview, and we'd like to know more about, how does a typical day looks like for you at work.
I would say the good thing about the job that I do is that there is no typical day, right? So I won't be able to say that, okay, let's say if I start my day at 9, so this is what I will do from 9 to 10, from
Okay.
10 to 12, this is what I do. So that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So the day would be very dynamic, and that is something that kind of is the way I like it as well. But then, of course, all of us have to prioritize what we need to do, right? So in my day also, when I kind of start off the day, I kind of look at what are my priorities for the day. I try to end up completing them and then make sure that I move on to the next things. There's no typical day, and that's interesting, right? So because it should not be monotonous and mundane. It's each day will have its own intricacies. Some days could be more challenging, some days could be really frustrating, some days could be like very light and easy. And so that's how the days progress when you look at a
But in
typical day.
general, I mean, I wanted to ask, like in general, what are the roles and responsibilities as into when somebody works into financial crime?
Yeah, so it depends upon the kind of role that you're playing as well, right?
Okay.
So let's say if you're talking to an analyst,
Okay.
so their role will start off, or their day will probably start off by looking at how many cases or alerts they have to finish. They
Okay.
will have to kind of work on those cases and they finish, and then at the end of the day, they need to make sure that the count matches how many they are supposed to finish, right? When you look at it from a team leader's point of view,
Mm-hmm.
they would probably have certain hurdles, or they would have certain meetings that they need to attend. Besides that, they would have one-to-ones with the teams, and then of course focusing on the other aspects that are required as well. In my case, because mine is more from a training support point of view, so my interactions are more in terms of working closely with the stakeholders, understanding what are their training needs, and trying to see how we can kind of solution for that. Sometimes making sure that I am there to deliver the training myself as well. In fact, having those connect with the team members to make sure that we are all aligned in terms of what we need to do. So those are some of the typical day-to-day activities that kind of happen from my point of view as well.
So, of course, you've been handling training from a long time now. What are the some best practices according to you to best fit the requirement for training?
My recommendation, and I think you are asking more from a trainer point of view, right?
Right,
Or from a training point of view?
from a training point of view.
Right. So, if you look at it, when you are approaching a role as a trainer, one thing that is at most required is that you need to be prepared with whatever you are going to deliver. So that pre-work in terms of understanding the curriculum, making sure that you're prepared for it, and making sure that you're ready for the curriculum, or by making sure that you're ready for whatever has to be delivered is of utmost importance. Now, during that period also, let's say when you are delivering the training, now things have changed a lot, right? So when I look at organizations as well, maybe if I look back till probably 2019, majority of our training used to happen face to face. So that's how the training used to happen. But then the pandemic changed that, right? So between 2020 to 2022, most of the staff were working from home. So training also moved to a virtual mode. Now there are both good and bad sides of it, but then the good side here is that there are certain enablers that have come up along with that, which kind of makes it possible for a trainer to make the sessions lively, right? So there are different tools like Mentimeter that can make a training very engaging, right? So it does not have to be like for 9 hours, like if let's say I am the trainer, I'm just standing and talking, right? So it can be a two-way conversation, and that's probably the best way to do that also. And besides that, it can be made a little bit more interactive and gamified as well. So now you would probably hear this term also called gamified learning, which has come into picture, where while there is a curriculum that needs to be completed, but there is a little bit of a gamified element to it, which kind of makes that experience a little bit more better and fruitful for the trainees. And I would say that it all has to end with a proper assessment of whether the trainees have attended and understood what was delivered during the training. So it starts off with the planning phase as to how you will start off and deliver the training, and it concludes with that phase where you have delivered the training, you have kind of delivered an assessment, and then send out the relevant reports to the stakeholders.
So, how hard it is to get people on board for the training?
It depends, right? So I think learning is something which probably should not be forced, is what I believe, right? So when we are kind of running a training session, the best thing is that, of course, there are certain mandatory trainings that kind of need to be kind of taken by everyone, right? Right from the analyst to the director of the company, everyone probably would need to take some mandatory learning. There are voluntary learning as well. But then when you look at learning as a space, I think the best experience for the learner is when they volunteer themselves for a particular learning, depending upon their own interest, right? So it should not be like whether, like I'm telling Pooja that Pooja, come join the money laundering session that I'm delivering because I'm delivering it. That's not how it should be. Pooja, you should feel invested that this is probably something beneficial. So I think one of the key essentials there would be to make sure that the trainer, or I would rather say the trainee, should be kind of a willing participant in that learning experience. And if that happens, there is no end to learning. And even right now also, when I talk about my role and my responsibilities, I kind of still try to upskill myself. I try to check what's going on in the general world of anti-money laundering, trying to kind of make sure that you have all that knowledge available, which will help you do your job better.
Since you said that you keep on reading about and knowing about what is going on in the regulatory framework, what are the things that you do to keep yourself updated with reference to the regulatory changes, and how do you also incorporate that within your team as well?
That's a very good question, Pooja. And the reason why it's a good question is also because the fact that this entire financial crime compliance space is a highly regulated environment, right? So when I say regulated, the regulations can keep changing.
Right.
So whoever is in this field will need to make sure that they are talking about what is currently the rule, not what was the rule probably 5 years back, right? So, and that makes it very essential that we keep ourselves updated. Now, the good thing is that with technology advancing, a simple Google search will also give you a lot of results in terms of what are the latest developments that have happened. But if you were to ask me specifically, one thing that I advise always my trainees is to make sure that you go to the regulatory pages. Okay, so when I say regulatory pages, I mean, let's say if we are talking about India, so you should visit the RBI page, the Reserve Bank of India page, because you can probably get a lot of information on some other site also, but then we don't know whether it is a verified content or not. But whatever content you find on these regulated web pages are actually the updated content mostly, and give you a lot of information. So from an international point of view, one of the major global bodies is called Financial Action Task Force, and they have a wonderful website where you get a total database of all the things that you need to know from an anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing point of view. So my recommendation is that if you're looking at probably keeping yourselves updated, that would be one way where you visit these regulatory web pages and keep yourself updated. Besides that, of course, there are a lot of courses that they can enroll for. So they can enroll for these courses, which kind of give them updated perspective on what is currently the entire trend with regards to this particular field.
Right. So it's more than being updated. It's about going to these verified websites, learn about it, and be on the right learning curve. So as we move to the last question, what advice would you like to give to the aspiring professionals who are looking to make a career in the field of financial crime compliance?
I would probably again go back to that earlier question that you asked, and I will say that the first thing is that you have to believe that this is the field in which you want to make a career. If you are keen on making a career in the field of anti-financial crime, then you should kind of take the next step of probably kind of starting off with a role and then kind of building that as a career. So the first thing would be to make sure that you show that interest in this particular domain. I can tell you from my own experience that it's a domain which will never be boring, because this entire activity where we kind of are looking at the overall investigation to make sure that we don't have a potential money launderer or a terrorist financier banking with a financial organization is a very interesting process. So anyone willing to make a career first should believe that this is the right step for them. And then once they get started in this journey, it does not stop there. They should be open to learning. They should make sure that they keep themselves updated. Because if we are not keeping ourselves updated, then we run the risk of being redundant and you probably become one-dimensional. So that learning does not stop there. And when you keep doing that, then you kind of learn a lot through the role. You become more confident, you get to know the regulatory landscape better, you get to have better conversation with your stakeholders, and that eventually reflects on your performance as well.
We have a lot of people who are freshers who've just started and stepped into the field of financial crime. How hard it is to enter into the field, and what kind of experience is required?
The good thing again here is that there is no hard and fast rule that you have to be a BCom or you have a Bachelor of Science degree to kind of enter this domain. The domain is open for everyone who is willing to kind of learn and kind of pick up that knowledge and implement it on the work that they're doing, right? So the thing that they need to focus on here is the fact that once they are entering, and again it goes back to the previous question that you asked, that they should be open to learning. So when they kind of pick up this particular domain, one thing that I would probably definitely, and this is based on my own experience, is something that I would recommend is that they should make sure that they focus a little bit on their communication skills as well, because what happens is that when we talk about activities like transaction monitoring or even other aspects of screening, you need to write a report, and that report needs to be clear. So if, let's say, I am writing the report, and if you are reading that report, you should be clear about what I have written, right? Unfortunately, what we have seen is that some individuals come with that interest, but then they do not possess that communication skill to articulate it. So that is something that they should also work on. And of course, you should have an analytical bent of mind, and also the fact that if you are able to think critically. So if you have that critical thinking bent of mind, if you have a decent communication skill, and if you are a learner, then I think there is no end to how much you can progress within this.
Just concluding with the last question, and that I had in mind, of course, there are people who are going to watch this. For someone who's hiring, somebody working in financial crime, or who wants to enter into financial crime, what are the 5 skills that you look at the time of hiring?
So I will probably not take it to 5 skills, but I will probably say 3 skills that they definitely need to have. One is good communication skills. That is essential. They need to kind of, if they are not an expert in the domain, they should at least have a basic understanding of the domain so that they can be upskilled. And the third thing that we look at is that they should be open to learning, rather. Right? So if these 3 qualities or these skills are there, then we can probably consider a candidate as scalable, and we can look at probably seeing if they can be successful in that role that they are being interviewed for. So the main thing is that they should be open to learning, right? And they should definitely have that domain background. At least a little bit of domain background would be required, and of course communication skill, just to kind of sum it up.
Right. So it's basically CAO that you say. It's communication, analytical skills, and open to learning. So thank you so much for clarifying my doubts, and hopefully other people are watching it. And it was wonderful to have you. And hopefully we'll have more such conversations, and people who are watching this will learn a lot.
My pleasure. As I mentioned, this was actually good, and look forward to more communication like this in the future. Thank you.
Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to never miss a video from us.